27001, the one area that we hear of people being most confused about is the audit process, and in particular, the external audit process. Now, it's unavoidable if you are going to go for ISO 27001 certification, you're going to be externally assessed, and therefore you need to know what to do. That's the purpose of this video. I want to give you a sense of what your stage 1, stage 2 and surveillance audits are about, and also, very importantly, how you can prepare for them. Now, there's a lot in here, as there are with many aspects of 27001, of course, but what I want to do is give you a sense of what it's all about. I go into a lot more detail in our online training program and our audit prep program, but right here, right now, let's understand the fundamental piece, shall we? So first of all, what is an audit about? Well, first thing to think is, and remember, is that audits are a good thing, and auditors are our friends. They are there to help you identify any weaknesses and areas to improve, because you want your information security management system to work. They have a fresh pair of eyes on your system. Their job, and the audit processor's job, is to ensure that you have established, maintained, and continually improved your information security management system, depending on where you are in the process, whether it's a stage 1, stage 2, or a surveillance audit. But the key thing to remember is auditors are our friends. So where do they come from? Where do these auditors materialize from? Well, they come from a certification body. So step 1, when you are implementing 27001, if you haven't done this already, if you're at stage 1, you need to identify a certification body. And there are many different kinds of CBs or certification bodies around the UK especially, but indeed around the world. If you're based in the United Kingdom, my first piece of advice is that you should look for one that is a UCAS accredited certification body. That's UCAS, UKAS. So look for your certification body that has that qualification. It simply means that they themselves are governed by the way that they audit. So they all audit in a very similar way if you are audited by UCAS. Once you've selected your certification body, you need to pay for your audit, because at that point, or until that point, you can't put the date in the diary. It's very unlikely that they're going to put dates in the diary until you paid for it. But once that's paid for, you can then put the dates in the diary, typically about 8 weeks, maybe even 12 weeks from the moment that you pay. Why does it need to be that long? Well, in all honesty, it's because certification bodies are so busy that they just don't have enough auditors to go around. So you need to get in quick. You need to get that certification body's date in the diary so that you can work back from that date and then start planning in how you're going to meet the requirements of the audit itself. And you do that by requesting a copy of the audit plan, and the audit plan will tell you exactly what they want to talk to you about, who they want to talk to on the actual audit itself. And that allows you then to identify the resources that you need. So for instance, if the audit plan says that they want to speak, or they want to look at your HR security processes, then of course you need someone who can talk about your HR security processes, about how you onboard people, what security vetting you do, what reference checks you do, that kind of thing. You'll need to talk about the training and awareness as part of that as well. So if they want to talk to you about your IT, your communications or operations security, then unless that's you, then you're going to need to secure the services or at the time with the IT department. And that's especially important if you outsource any of these services. So again, if you outsource your HR function or you outsource your IT function, then you're going to need to ask them if they could be available on the dates that you've selected as your audit. Now, when you've got your plan and you know who the auditor is going to want to speak to, it's very prudent to make sure that you conduct some form of internal audit on those areas yourself. It's certainly something that we at consultants like us do, because like preparing for an exam, preparing for something that is especially important, you want to make sure that everything is covered. It's belt and braces approach. Do you have all the right processes? Do you have all the records up to date? Are your documentations signed off? And so on and so forth. Have you conducted all the internal audits and the management reviews that you need to conduct? Once you've identified all of the areas that are going to be covered under your audit, and you've done a small amount of self-assessment, the audit itself, or the auditor may have also included a list of documents that they want to see either before the audit or during the audit. Now, again, a big part of what we offer consultants like us is checklists for you to go through. But to give you a sense of the kind of things that they might want to look at would be job descriptions. They would look at contract of employment, employee handbook. They may want to look at your privacy notice and privacy policies. They may want to look at your supplier contracts. They may also want to look at your ICO, that's the Information Commissioner's Office registration certificate. And they will probably want to look at your employment or your professional indemnity insurance. So any insurance documents that you have should be made available either before the audit or during the audit. Now, having all of this information together really will just make the audit itself go well. You need to help the auditor as much as possible. And again, this is where some very obvious things come to fore when you've done this, but I want to make it very clear here. The auditor is our friend, as I've said, so you should take care of the auditor. They have a job to do. They're only with you a very short space of time. So you need to give them as much information as you possibly can. The more documentation and evidence you can present to them, it really does make their job easier. This doesn't mean that they're going to give you an easy ride. It just simply means that when they're writing up their report to be able to send off to their compliance team, who will ultimately check all of this information, they've got more information to be able to play with, to be able to work with, and that works in your favor. So make sure you communicate with the auditor on a regular basis before the actual audit itself, and certainly throughout the audit. Keep checking in with them. Do they have everything they need? If you're showing something on screen to the auditor, then what you should be doing also is saying, would you like a copy of this? Can I upload it anywhere? Can I send it to you? It's also worth remembering and noting that when you sign your contract with the certification body, you are signing an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. So any information you share with them will be held confidential, and once the audit is finished, then at that point, all the information will be destroyed. But take care of the auditor. If it's a virtual audit, then they will lead on the audit, and they themselves will dictate any regular breaks that you're going to have. If it's on site, then again, although it will be them leading the audit, you should say to them, these are our refreshment facilities. Can we get you teas and coffees? Whatever it may be. If they want separate breakout rooms to be able to go and interview people, give them the facilities to do that. They are your friends. They are our friends, and you should take care of them. Now, the audit itself, again, when you're conducting this, whether it's your stage 1, stage 2, or your surveillance audit, prior to the audit, communicate to your staff that there is an audit taking place. It's a good time to raise awareness of security again if you haven't done it for a while. Send your teams a reminder of where they can find the information security policy, what to do if there is an incident, who they should be speaking to. Explain to them again, if you're working in an office environment, the importance of the clear desk policy, and make sure that again they understand that you have important guests on site. Of course, if it's virtual, it's slightly different, but it's still a great opportunity to raise awareness across your business of the importance of your ISO 27001 and information security, and the relevance of the standard to you as a business. Why did you do this in the first place? Why did you start on this journey? Again, remind your teams of that fact and explain to them that your stage one audit is coming up, or your stage two audit is coming up, and therefore you want to be able to achieve that goal of having your certificate on the wall or on your virtual wall on your website. So make sure that they understand the importance of it, because again, in the past we've seen organizations fail on that point in terms of not reminding their staff that there's an audit taking place, and we've seen very simple mistakes being made, and they raise opportunities for improvement or other findings. So when we're talking about running these audits, you have your stage one, your stage two, and your surveillance. What are the differences? Well, the differences are many. Stage one is about your ISMS. So do you have all the mandatory documentation that you need to implement an effective information security management system? Do you have all the mandatory records and mandatory documents? Are the policies signed off? Have you conducted a couple of management review meetings, internal audits, that type of thing? The way I always describe your stage one is, it's like you're traveling up Mount Everest or Mount Kilimanjaro or whatever mountain range you wish to mention. And your auditor is coming in to make sure that you have all the necessary equipment to be able to get to the summit, to get to the top of this mountain. And the top of this mountain is your stage two. So your stage one is really just about the ISMS. And what it essentially is, I often again say to people, it's a bit like the auditor is saying, tell me how you do things. And your job is to tell them, and yes, indeed, show them some policies and documentation and such, but you're going to talk to them and tell them how you've implemented 27001, how you've identified your objectives, how you've identified the risks, and yes, you'll show them the risk register, and you'll show them the audit plan. But essentially, stage one, tell me how you've done something, how have you done this thing. Once you have passed your stage one, and in reality there's no pass or fail, it's more of a case of the auditor will say to you, yes, you're ready for stage two, or you're not ready for stage two yet. But once you've got through stage one and they say, yep, you've got all the necessary equipment, you can go on your journey now to the top of the summit of that mountain over there. They will at that point again help you identify the dates for your stage two audit. And between your stage one and your stage two audit, there is more work to do. So you should be doing at least 2 more audits. You should be doing at least 2 more management reviews. You should be communicating with your teams so that they understand the importance of information security and your ISO standard. You should conduct a business continuity exercise. So there's a variety of things that you should do to, again, keep your ISMS alive and well maintained and being implemented and embedded. Your stage two is pretty much the preparation is pretty much the same as it is for your stage one, which is you will ask for your audit plan. You will identify who on that audit plan who you need to be able to speak to. So it may be that on your stage 2 audit, the auditor wants to speak to the person responsible for compliance or supplier management. So you might have a procurement manager who does that, or you might have a legal team who look after your legal compliance. You might have a risk manager, so you will want to bring in the risk manager. So identifying what resources you need, who you need before your stage 2, and again, prepare by explaining to them what is required, who is needed, and the audit plan will again or should again identify any key documents that the auditor would like to see. Now, once you've gone through your stage 2 and all is completed, hopefully at the end of that, the auditor will give you the big thumbs up and say to you, congratulations, you've passed. Non-conformities are when the auditor has identified something that actually could be improved. And this could be, for instance, you have an information security policy that is communicated, so that's fine, but you haven't communicated it to all your suppliers. Or the opportunity for improvement might be that the auditor says, well, why don't you put it on your website? Because that way any visitor to your website will instantly see your security policy or have access to it. Now, it's a nice idea and you can discuss it as a team, but you may ultimately decide that that's not something you want to do, and therefore you can decide that you're not going to implement it. You're not going to put that policy on the website. So OFIs are discretionary, whereas minor non-conformities, the next level up, is an indication that something is missing. It's not a whole section of 27001, but there is something that is broken. So for instance, if we stick with the information security policy for a second, let's say the requirement is that an information security policy shall be documented, it shall be signed off, and it shall be communicated, and there should be some form of acceptance or verification by the recipient. Let's say you have documented your policy and signed it off, but it hasn't been communicated. Well, that's a minor non-conformity because you're missing two very key aspects of the requirements of the standard. So a minor non-conformity must be addressed, and we'll come on to what you need to do in a second. A major non-conformity simply means that there's a whole section missing, or you haven't done something that is required by the standard. Now, a major non-conformity in our example would be there is no information security policy, or you have an information security policy, but it isn't signed off at all. It hasn't been communicated, and therefore there's no way on earth it could be verified or as being read by the intended recipient. So there's a major aspect of your ISMS that is missing there. In our experience, we've seen major non-conformities being raised, or we've raised them because an organization doesn't have a risk register or has a risk register but hasn't identified any of the risks. So therefore, you need to make sure that you are following what's required by the standard, so you don't have any OFIs. OFIs are fine. If you've got a few of those, they're fine. Minors, not so good. Majors, absolutely not. They're the things to be really concerned about. But even if you do get minors and majors, you still have 28 days to address them. If you have OFIs, then nothing will really happen until the next audit in 12 months' time. And at that point, they will ask you, what did you do with your OFIs? And you can say, yep, we've done it, we've implemented it, or actually, we looked at it, we decided we're going to do nothing with it. If it's a minor or a major, you have 28 days to address it. If it's a minor non-conformity, then you have to have an action plan and submit that action plan to address the requirement. So again, back to our example, a minor non-conformity where the policy hasn't been communicated effectively, it may be that over the next 6 months we will communicate across our business, and we will make sure that people verify that they've read it, for instance. A major non-conformity, however, would be that evidence would be required that you've already addressed this major issue. So one minor non-conformity is a action plan, and two, your major non-conformity, you would actually need evidence to be able to demonstrate that you've done that. Now with that, at this point in time, I'm going to stop talking because there's a lot in there. There's a hell of a lot around audits and auditing that you need to consider. I hope that has been useful. I genuinely believe that auditing and auditors are our friends and are useful exercises. I hope you do too. Look after your auditor and they will look after you. Your internal audit should have a sense and a feel for some of the things that we've already touched on in this video. But there you are. If you do want to know more, as I've said, we do have a lot more information in our courses and such. But I think right here, right now, that's enough information for you to be getting on with. So with that and that said, thanks again for watching. I hope it has been useful. Please do share, and please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you.